Silo is back. Season 2, Episode 1 aired this Friday, and we officially find out what happens to Juliet after she leaves the silo at the end of last season. We saw her make it above the hill to see that there are additional silos out in the world, and we questioned what her next move would be. Well, unsurprisingly, it was probably the most obvious thing possible. She would walk to the closest silo and attempt to get in. This episode jumps in time between both modern day with Juliet outside of the silo, just after being banished from Silo 18, to flashbacks in the new silo, which we'll call Silo 17, as well as flashes back to Juliet's past. As a reminder, I have not read the books, so any theories or discussion that happen here will solely be based on the show and will be spoiler free. Welcome to Splash Page, let's jump in. The episode opens with a young boy running, holding a torch and entering a room filled with people. There are a lot of signs that the silo we're in is not the silo we're used to. He runs by a Thank You Founders poster that has a Brave New World look to it. However, you see it's been graffitied with the words liar, truth now, and thank is changed with the F word. The boy's name is Tim, and he says the engineer has sent him with a message for his dad. The engineer is also the title of this episode. The note says, generator will flood in 15 minutes. Tim's dad appears to be the leader of the rebellion. He's also the sheriff of the silo. As you can see, he wears the same uniform and badge that Holston did. They don't want lights in this room, and my guess is it's because there might be cameras around or something that, if it was illuminated, would give their enemies a better view of what's happening. The sheriff asks to ring the bell 5 times, and when the bell starts ringing, the rebelling silo members begin to walk up the stairs. The people defending the silo hear the bells and assume it means an attack. It looks like they've blown up the bridge that attaches their floor to the staircase. And the rebellion has kind of prepared this big slab that they drop over top of that to create a bridge. And then the shooting begins. Quite a few of the rebellion is killed, but eventually they win and take over the area. The sheriff says he wants Russel taken alive. After the battle, with the rebellion victorious, the sheriff and his wife talk about someone who wouldn't open the door. I assume this is Russel, which comes back at the end of the episode. The sheriff asks his wife if Russel was lying. We don't know exactly who Russel is, but he's either the engineer or maybe this guy, who I assume is the Bernard of this silo. He might also be the guy that didn't open the door at the end of the episode, but we'll get there. What is he lying about? Well, we do know that, and it's whether or not the outside world is toxic, because in the next scene, it looks like the entire Silo 17 is preparing to go outside. The sheriff is holding a green flag. Why? Symbolism? I don't know, you got me. But we do a smash cut to the flag standing in the ground. However, we see there's a bunch of holes in it and there are dead bodies everywhere. So Silo 17 learned the hard way that it's actually poisonous outside. But this gives Juliet the opportunity to get inside of a silo before she runs out of oxygen in her suit. So she has to climb over what appears to be thousands of dead, rotting corpses and then figure out a way to break into the silo. We see that the heat tape is starting to fall off of Juliet's wrists, so this might be what's causing the urgency for Juliet to find a place to go, rather than her just running out of oxygen. She's able to quickly get into the airlock because all of this is left open. She closes the door behind her and finds a crowbar. And with a ton of effort, she's able to get into the door of Silo 17. Once inside, Juliet realizes that the heat tape has been coming off and makes a run to get deeper inside the silo. She still has a crowbar and she finds 2 canteens of water. While in the cafeteria, in Silo 17, she sees the word lies are painted over the giant screen. She then takes the water bottles she found on the table and dump it all over her clothes. I guess this is to wash off any poison from the outside, but what's in the water bottles either doesn't appear to be water, appears to be a coffee or some kind of soup, but I guess it could be water that's rusted in the bottle, and I don't know how long it would take for water to rust inside of these bottles. But I know it'll only take a second to like this video and subscribe to our channel. I've also placed a link below to the book series this is based on if you want to buy them. If you buy them through this link, our channel will make a small commission to no extra cost to you. Back to the show. Once she gets the suit off, Juliet explores the silo. It's easy for her to navigate because it's identical to her silo. This one is a bit overgrown due to the lack of care and any plants or weeds or whatever, but it's still pretty much intact. She goes into what I'm assuming is the sheriff's apartment. I don't know this for sure, but Juliet obviously knows this area well considering that's where she lived in Silo 18 for a bit. And she goes into the closet to find a jumpsuit and change into some more comfortable clothes. She also breaks the mirror to reveal that there are cameras in this silo as well. If you remember in season 1, this was a watershed moment for her in understanding what was going on. Juliet goes to the agricultural floor and sees that there are some lights on, as well as water being poured. So there still are a few trees or plants blooming. We flash back to Juliet as a youth with Shirley going down to the sorting area. This is the last chance for anyone to pick through the garbage before it's put into the incinerator. This is really her introduction to the down deep. Anything they find, they can keep, and anything that they deem pretty valuable, they'll give to Walker. Juliet finds a broken toy and is told that Walker hates toys, but Juliet feels that she can fix it, and everyone kind of talks down to her about it, but that won't stop a young Juliet. We see a young Juliet with Walker, and they talk about how Juliet is kind of a loner, how she doesn't really have any friends. Walker sees Juliet is working on fixing the toy, but instead wants her to fix something else, something she actually doesn't even know what it is. During this conversation, they talk a bit about Juliet's mother and how she died, but Walker corrects Juliet and says that her mother killed herself. This is interesting because the way Walker says this is she says to Juliet that in the down deep and mechanical, they call things what they are. So we see these flashbacks kind of prove how Juliet has been trained or maybe conditioned to be prepared for her current situation, being by herself, figuring out how to survive alone, fixing things she doesn't understand, etc. Still in the flashback, Juliet gives Shirley the toy she fixed, showing that Juliet will always figure out how to get something done. Back in present day, Juliet is still in Silo 17. She hears a noise from what appears to be the same area that the rebellion attacked. I say this because the bridge is still missing, similar to how it was during the rebellion. Juliet, being resourceful, looks up and sees what appears to be a number of judicial members hanging by their feet. She pulls them up one by one and starts to stitch the rope together. Juliet is attempting to get across the blown bridge and find out what the noise is. There's a lot of ambient noise throughout this episode that kind of keep you on edge. You're kind of always expecting to see somebody or something coming at her, but for the most part, these sounds kind of go unexplained. The episode is also extremely dark. It kind of reminds me of the final seasons of Game of Thrones, which is kind of annoying if I'm being honest. Let me know if you agree. Juliet begins to struggle while she's climbing down the rope and realizes that she's not over either end of the bridge. So she begins to sway back and forth, almost like a swing, in an attempt to gain enough momentum to swing to the other side. But before she can get all the way over, either friction or maybe someone cuts this rope and it snaps and she falls, slamming into a body of water. If we remember from earlier in the episode, the engineer sent a letter that said, "Generator will flood in 15 minutes." My guess is that this flooding was way more than just the generator and ended up taking up quite a few floors in the silo. When Juliet splashes down into the water, we see that she is really struggling because she doesn't know how to swim. Inside of the silos, there is no body of water large enough that she would have had to learn how to swim. In earlier episodes of season 1, we saw that there was a large body of water underneath Silo 18, and how terrified she was to go down there because she didn't know how to swim, but normal people from the silo weren't aware of anything below the silo. So, after changing into another set of clothes and patching up an injury she got on her arm, Juliet is ready to try again. Speaking of the water below the silo, we cut to another flashback of Juliet and Shirley going down beneath the silo to the area where George Wilkins used to hang out and where that body of water is. There's some graffiti on the wall, which has a blue eye that looks very Big Brother-esque, a hand with a wrench in it, the word loyal, the word the finger, followed by names, which I did my best to make out. Looks like Paul Davies, Manuel something, Mary, Ear, Sven, Tail. I have no idea what those last names were. There's also a bay with a little heart over it, and something that seems to say Sven juice? I don't know. And I don't know what this is, and neither do the characters. Shirley says that it's something from before the rebellion. Shirley and a young Juliet talk about how one time Shirley was left down there and all of the lights were off. She figured out how to get back to the silo. Juliet says that she couldn't have done that, and Shirley assures her that she could have. And that's kind of similar to the situation Juliet is going through right now in Silo 17, trying to figure out a way to survive and potentially get back to 18. Juliet's new idea is to build a little bridge using pipe and some fencing to be able to walk across the hole that was left by blowing the bridge. It's dicey, but she successfully gets across. However, the little bridge that she built breaks and now she's stranded on the far side. She looks for the source of the noise and finds out that it's a fan that's blowing what looks like a badge and maybe a key on it. Juliet is also standing in front of more graffiti that says truth. Truth was the word that was carved into the back of the sheriff badge from Holston. Since the silo is presumed empty, I know a fan takes very little power to run, so I guess it's possible it's been left on since it's been empty, kind of like the lights. But who knows? Luckily for Juliet, there appears to be the metal sheet that the resistance or rebellion used to create a bridge in the first place. It's still on the far side, and she pushes it over onto some large barrels and somehow successfully repairs the bridge utilizing some counterweights so when the barrels fall into the abyss, the bridge stays upright. As she goes to leave, she hears music, which stops her dead in her tracks. This song is Moon River by Audrey Hepburn, and the song was used in Breakfast at Tiffany's. The lyrics might have something to do with Julia and whoever's in this room, which reminds me a lot of the hatch from Lost. But the lyrics go, Moon River, wider than a mile, I'm crossing you in style someday. Old dream maker, you heartbreaker, wherever you're going, I'm going your way. Two drifters off to see the world, there's such a lot of world to see. We're after the same rainbow's end, waiting around the bend. My huckleberry friend, Moon River and me. This to me says whoever's in this hatch room will likely end up working alongside of Juliet, as they will have some kind of common ground to better their circumstances. But let me know if you agree. As Juliet approaches the noise, we see the back of these doors that say, Any survivors, please help us, which is weird because it's on the inside of the door, but we then see a few dead bodies here, so assuming the authors of this note were not helped. Then there's another set of doors, and on the back of these it looks like it says, We'll get in sooner or later, written so the person in the hatch can see it. And now we're looking at the hatch. Juliet quickly tries to force her way in and pretty quickly gives up before a light turns on and we see this man's eyes. His tone is very conversational, which almost makes this scarier. And he kind of says, You see a closed door, so sure your instincts are to open it, but if you try it again, I'll kill you. And that's where the episode ends. Pretty much a setup episode, as you'd imagine after such a large break, as well as a huge cliffhanger at the end of last season. This episode actually reminds me a lot of the movie and book The Martian, where the protagonist, played by Matt Damon, was basically just thrown issue after issue after issue, and he had to keep coming up with solutions to solve them. It kind of felt like we were watching that with poor Juliet. I'm curious to see if the character behind the door is Russel, and what is in the room he's in. Is this the same guy from the bridge fight earlier in the episode, or is this the engineer? Are they one and the same? Do you think this floor is part of IT? And maybe that the communication stack for the silo is there? Has this person left this room in the last 5, 10, 20 years? And where does Juliet go from here? Does she ignore that he's in there or try to talk to him and rationalize him into coming out? How do you feel about the first episode of Season 2? Were you disappointed we didn't get to see anything from Silo 18? Let me know what you think in the comments down below. Of course, you know what I suspect. Juliet will get in that room and they'll partner up to do something. But what is that something? Well, thanks a lot for watching this video. Please follow along if you like Silo content, as we'll be making a bunch all season long. Well, that's it from me. Take it easy, YouTube.